I'm not needing any subsidies. This is easy stuff. I mean, here's all it took. I got a piece of paper. I admit they put something, they drafted something on there, but I used a pen, and I signed this little thing at the bottom. It was an executive order saying if we're going to purchase any vehicles, they have to be alternative fuel vehicles. And then I said, well, wait a second, what about all these taxi cabs? We announced an initiative to convert all our taxi cabs to alternative fuel cabs. Now, you knew, or you know, that New York City announced that they were going to do this. I was joking with Kevin a minute ago that Mayor Bloomberg announced on the Today Show that initiative. I had a year and a half prior, however, announced on local cable channel 26, our version of that. A little less attention. Not everyone was watching. But already, without impacting the industry, as these cars go off, new ones have to be purchased. What do drivers pay for? Gate, their rental, and gas. At a time when gas was going to $4 a gallon, we require these alternative fuel vehicles. Guess who led the charge for this? The drivers. They pay less in gas. It was a win-win. We got together with Mayor of Austin. We put together a partnership called Plug-in Partners. And we said, let's do an open order to commit. Our city, your city, large and small, that we will create a market for plug-in hybrids by committing to GM, Ford, and all these others that will purchase X number of thousand of vehicles a year as a way of leveraging our resources and regionalizing it truly in a geographic space across this country. We put together a framework with the Silicon Valley Leadership Group, exactly what you're doing here today, and with the Bay Area Council, exactly what you did here today, to begin to build out a ubiquitous infrastructure for electric vehicles. We live in a state where there's more alternative vehicles than any other state in the nation. We're first adopters. Hybrid technology is 10 plus years old. That's yesterday's technology. Plug-in technology is the game changer. But we've got to standardize that infrastructure. I was joking, if I drove up here and I have an electric vehicle at home, and I've got my 220 volt, but Kevin decides in Sacramento he doesn't believe in 220, he wants 110, I'm not getting back home. So you've got to build that capacity and build partnerships. That's why Greenwise is right on target. You can't go this alone. In order to build that capacity, you've got to create a system. To build that system, you've got to streamline and you've got to organize from your permitting, your planning, all your zoning strategies. By the way, we have the highest green building standards of any city in America. We did that working with architects, engineers, developers. And now we're doing required audits for all buildings because we want to do this. You buy a car, you want to check what kind of miles per gallon it gets. Well, as a business person, I want to get an office space. I want to know what kind of miles per gallon the office gets, meaning how energy efficient is it. So we're requiring that be disclosed on every commercial space in San Francisco. By the way, led by the building owners. They love the idea because we're going to come in and do free energy audits. And we'll provide the resources and the grants, etc., to pay for the light bulbs to be swapped, the weatherization, the boilers to be redone, etc. Great opportunities. Here's my final point, because I made the point about being nakedly self-interested. Consider this fact, and it's a fact that is objective as I can make it because you read one study and the next study contradicts that one study you just read. So within the margin of error, these are the numbers. You invest $1 billion in a coal plant. You generate about 870 jobs. It's not bad. You invest that same $1 billion into a nuclear plant. You generate anywhere from 1,000, and I've seen studies that show about north of 1,500, maybe 1,600 jobs. You invest $1 billion, however, in solar, you generate 1,900 jobs. You invest in wind, 3,300 jobs. And by the way, we have enough wind in this country to take care of all of our energy needs. All we have to deal with is what Joe was talking about, and that's a grid that recognizes that these electrons can't necessarily move from those rural regions out here into urban centers unless we modernize it and upgrade it. But if you want the game changer, and this is my last final point, and out of the nation to why the green building standards were so important from our perspective. If you want the real job generator, it's certainly not coal, it's not nuclear, it's not even solar and wind, in contrast to retrofitting buildings. 7,000 jobs are created. And who do those jobs go to disproportionately? The one area of our economy that has been disproportionately hit by this economic downturn, and those are folks in the construction and building trades. Well, unemployment is arguably 2 to 3 times higher, depending on the community, than the statewide average. If there's anything that you can do to raise the bar, that I believe you should do, that can have the biggest bang for the buck and really create a paradigm shift, is standardizing and committing to those energy efficiency and retrofit upgrades of existing building stock. 45% in my city of the greenhouse gas emit not from the back of cars and tailpipe, but from buildings like this. Figuratively. We have got to reconcile that. Energy efficiency. Study came out during the Bush administration that showed half of the needs in terms of what we need to do in rolling back any greenhouse gas emissions to the worst case scenario can be addressed just through energy efficiency. That's where we should start. And I hope that's where you do start in terms of your regional approach to this Greenwise, because you're not just greening, not just being better environmental stewardships, you are creating real wealth, real opportunities, and real jobs. And by the way, why with $1.5 trillion to $1.8 trillion of money that the banks have just sitting there, why we don't do an SBA-type loan strategy for these banks, just take 10% of that money and put that out there, won't cost a damn cent, 90% loan guarantees like the SBA, and do it for energy upgrades and energy efficiency is beyond me. You want a job stimulus. This should bring Democrats and Republicans together like nothing else. This is extraordinary opportunity for you, for this state, for this nation, and the world collectively we're trying to build. My final point. All the rhetoric in the world is not going to solve this. You got to take risks. The biggest problem in politics today is guys like me are risk adverse. We're scared to death of tomorrow's headlines. You're going to try new things, you're going to screw up, you're going to fail. But one thing Kevin Johnson understands, because he comes from the private sector and he understands this from a sports perspective. Heck, it was Wayne Gretzky who said this. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. He should know he missed more shots than anyone else in NHL history. My point is you got to increase the number of tries. And that's where leadership matters so much. And you got to support bold leadership. And you got to create conditions to encourage bold leadership. But you're going to make mistakes. But in order to change things, we're going to have to do things differently. And so I encourage you, and I say this even more perhaps to the press than anyone else, to allow their elected officials to try new things, to be more entrepreneurial. Why is it the private sector seems to get it right more often than the public sector? Because of that entrepreneurial spirit. Because Google failed more often than Yahoo. That's why they're crushing Yahoo. Because they learned from their mistakes and they moved on. But they weren't afraid of making them. We need elected officials that can do the same. Thoughtfully, judiciously, using common sense. I'm not naive here. But in this era, in this area, we need that kind of leadership. Decentralized, focus on local job creation. A focus on enlivening the senses of entrepreneurs of every stripe and building capacity and systems on a regional basis. Sky's the limit. Thank you all very much for your leadership and stewardship. Congratulations.
Come on, Sacramento, you better have. 2 questions from the audience for Mayor Newsom. So if you have a question, raise your hand. On this side of the room, stand up. Yes, ma'am. And then somebody on this side of the room. All right.
What advice do you have for Sacramento for implementing similar composting program that you have in
I'm not going to do this to this guy. Trust me, I'm still reeling from the political fallout. You know, I think the biggest advice, I mean this, and I challenge you, and it's interesting. I invite everyone, they say, well, what should I do in San Francisco? And they say, Golden Gate Bridge. I said, no. They say, what about the cable car? No. Waxing? No. Alcatraz? No. They say, well, what the heck do you think we should do? I say, go down to Pier 96 to the recycling center. Because you've never seen anything like it in your life. And here's what you'll see. Not only will you be mesmerized and you'll sit there like a 5-year-old, just absolutely just stunned by the beauty of garbage. Sort of the song and dance of garbage bouncing around on conveyor belts. But you'll look around and you'll see folks that don't look like me. They come from Bayview Hunters Point, up on the hill, West Point and Middle Point in our city, that all have jobs. Because our workforce training programs have aligned our economic development programs, and we're creating jobs because of these recycling mandates and these composting programs. And you'll see the one thing that matters more than anything else, and that's evidence. It's very difficult to convince people of things unless they can see it for themselves. And once you see it, you know it's possible, it can be done. So perhaps more than anything else, I know this sounds ridiculous, I'd take a little field trip down there. Some of those that may be doubters here. And come down to Pier 96. Let me know. And take a look for yourself at why this is good public policy, it's good economic policy, and it's good social justice policy as well. But do enjoy the bridge and Court Tower and other things.
Are your school districts involved with composting the same as all the residents, and how did you attain that?
Now, and isn't that, thank you for the question, that's the magic, isn't it? It's kids are teaching their parents. They're coming home. You know, what I do, I don't know if you noticed, we do salad bars in all our schools. I got so fed up with this obesity issue, we just started funding salad bars. And everyone said, oh, the kids are never going to eat broccoli and all these things. And it's just amazing, because I'm actually shocked when I see kids eating broccoli. I'm like, do you know what you're doing? You look so happy. And then it's a true story, it's so indelible in my mind, this beautiful young child, and he didn't finish all his broccoli and salad, but he was running up to show me the composting bin that they had, and he put it in. And then he starts explaining to me, just last week, Mayor, we actually grew the broccoli. I'm like, last week? Really? He says, you know, we do it outside, and we take the composting, and they come back, and it's dirt. And then we put the dirt out there, and we have this garden. And we go out, and our teacher teaches us about there are no shortcuts in life. And there's seasons. And you have to have the long-term view. I thought, my God, these values, this is amazing. This little composting program that connects to all these other fundamental values. I don't want to start sounding like I'm the mayor of Berkeley, not San Francisco. I still love it. Tom's a friend. But I really believe in these things. You know, it really does start. You can get into those classrooms, not indoctrinate our kids, but to create these living classrooms, these green gardens, to take the old concrete gardens and turn them into a narrative from an educational perspective. And let people understand who they are, where they came from, and that there are seasons in life. I think that's a pretty powerful paradigm shift in a world where shortcuts have created the economic conditions that we're now living in, and how painful those have been to real people, and how we must learn that lesson. I think it's pretty profound. Thank you all very much. Have fun.